We are going to start with football. Tigers return from spring break, back onto the practice field. I've heard T-Bob talk about how that return can go for some. I'm not sure every football player's spring break is exactly like T-Bob's were, but some very well may have been. And so you got to kind of get back into the rhythm of things when you come back. And so they were back in action today. And one of the things that stood out is when you read the reports and you kind of think about the talking points of this spring is just how compromised LSU is in some spots when you talk about their numbers. Offensive line just decimated with guys that are missing time. Brian Kelly specifically said today that there's only one player, Armani Goodwin, the entire roster they don't expect back for summer workouts, not even fall camp, summer workouts. They expect everybody but Armani Goodwin back. But right now, when you look at the numbers that they've got on the offensive line, it's limited. Same thing goes for the running back room. A lot of work for Trey Holly. A lot of work for Noah Kane. Everybody else, Emery's dealing with his academics. You got Armani Goodwin is out. Williams is out. I mean, there's just a lot of attrition there. And the same thing goes for the defensive line as well. They're limited on numbers at the defensive line. You've got Jordan Jefferson coming in from West Virginia who's not able to go. You've got Big Maason Smith who's not ready to go. You've got Deshaun Womack who's come in who's not ready to go. So you're hurting on the defensive line. But the question did come up regarding Maason Smith okay, when do you expect him back and what might he give? Because now all we have to go off of is a 5-star billing, a freshman year where he was out there a little bit, and then a sophomore year that was cut short 6 minutes into the first game or whatever it was. I can still vividly see from my seat in the Superdome when he jumped up and collapsed, and I went, that's going to be the end of that, isn't it? I mean, when you see a guy jump not anywhere near anyone and immediately hit the deck, you're going, okay, well, this is not good. And it wasn't. And he did not return. But he is going to come back. And I'm not, y'all know at this point, I'm not X and O guy. That's very difficult for me. But when Brian Kelly at times talks X's and O's, someone like me who watches a lot of football and has a general understanding of the way things go, gets a football-style explanation, I find it interesting. And today he was asked what Maason Smith would bring to the defensive front when he's ready.
Look, I mean, we had great edge presence last year, right? It was pretty obvious with Harold and VJ. But you could fan one side and chip or move the back to the other because we didn't have a great inside pass rush presence. Now you put Maason to the inside. If you do that this year, I don't know how many sacks he'll have. You can't single block him. We couldn't. So when you start to fan to him, and when I say fan, when you start to move the center to him or use a back inside, now you're going to leave our edge players one-on-one and, we'll have a really good balanced pass rush. So he brings that presence, which we didn't have last year.
It's a numbers game. The offense is trying to win with numbers. The defense is trying to win with numbers. And Maason Smith changes the numbers because it's very difficult to block. Now, I would suggest that Maason Smith, when he was quote-unquote unblockable by LSU in fall camp, was dealing with the same offensive line group, very likely, that could not block Florida State. They made some shuffles and did some different things and moved some guys around, and eventually things got better. But you remember, in the Superdome that night, LSU had real trouble blocking Florida State. I'm already concerned about Jared Verse for the first game because he was setting up residence in LSU's backfield the entirety of the night and for some reason decided to pass on millions of dollars in the NFL draft to go back to Tallahassee to play another year. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But Maason Smith is going to be a huge impact player for this team and should be just rip-roaring and ready to go when that time comes. And to change the numbers and to force numbers to the inside, as he said, leaves you lacking numbers offensively on the outside, and that's where the guys who are really there to rush the passer can start to affect the game. And Mekhi Wingo had a really good year last year, and Jaquelin Roy had a nice year last year. Jacoby and Guillory gave you some depth last year, but none of it was really in the pass rush side of things. Those guys were more so solid against the run until the A&M game. And you can have another dimension on the interior when you bring in a talent that is Maason Smith. The other thing that we don't have any sound on, but I took note of when Brian Kelly was talking today, was about special teams. And he was asked what that unit is going to look like from a coaching perspective. And his answer to me was interesting because he suggested that he did a lot of work on studying what went wrong on special teams, because everyone knows that last year the special teams were a disaster. I defended portions of it at times, but the entirety of the body of work was indefensible. They just didn't do the job. So the question is, okay, what are you going to be able to do to fix it? And I was intrigued by the answer. He said, look, I looked at the tape and I was really happy with our scheme. Really happy with the way we set things up. And then he continued and said, well, I also thought our punter was excellent. I thought our freshman kicker did a good job. Our long snapper was excellent. Some of the individuals did really good jobs. So as I picked this answer apart, and I'm going, okay, you thought they were put in position, and you thought that the individual specialists did a pretty good job for the most part. That just tells me the execution and attention to detail on the field stunk. I mean, how else are you going to say it? They were in position, and it didn't work. Well, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So he has made some changes here. You bring in a new special teams coach to coordinate the unit with the help of some on-field analysts that, of course, aren't on the field on game day. And you hope that that's going to fix it. But I was interested to hear him say that he thought the plan was pretty good, and he did continue to say we just didn't field the ball, which is true. They didn't field the ball. I can't put any 0% of the blame, in my opinion, for Malik Neighbors dropping 2 punts against Florida State and Jack Best muffing the opening kickoff against Tennessee. 0% of that blame goes on the special teams coach to me. None. Then you start to get into penalties, holding calls, lack of coverage. Okay, now I can start to get on your page. I'm not just going to take every single mistake that goes on while the special teams unit's on the field and pin that directly on the coach. I'm going to allow for a little nuance there. And once you evaluate the entirety of it over the, what they play, 14 games, it was not even close to good enough. Some of it was on the coach, some of it wasn't. But I was interested to hear Brian Kelly. It's the first time I'd heard him say, yeah, the scheme was good, preparation was good, just lack of execution, which got to get that cleaned up in a hurry, because you start to play in games that are as important as the ones LSU is going to play and that may be decided by as little as these games could be decided by. You gotta get the guys to execute the plan on special teams. Don't hold. Don't clip. Another thing that happened, I'm just going through the errors that they made last year. I'm going to put 0% of the blame on the special teams coach when you're offsides on the kickoff. I'm pretty sure the 10 guys who were running alongside the kicker know they're not supposed to cross the football before they go, and somebody just did. If it comes to my attention that they didn't know that, well, then we'll have a different discussion. I'm going to assume that the guys knew not to be offsides on the kickoff, and that happened. But then you put the totality of it together. Not good enough. Got to get a lot better on special teams next year. And Brian Kelly did say, felt like they had shored up what they need on the return side of things. I don't know if that's Aaron Anderson. I don't know if that's who they decided is going to be that guy, but they've got to find it, and they'll certainly have a good bit of time to get that done. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Hunt Palmer Show on YouTube. If you don't mind, throw us a like right below and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next time.